Hello, boys and girls, children of all ages, and everyone else. I got a quickie but a goodie here, hopefully for you. So what I got is I got the trigger assembly here for compound. Actually, it's not compound. It's a radial arm saw. Saw that you squeeze this and it goes ring. The blade's hooked to it, and you pull it out, and it cuts the wood for you. I tried epoxying it, and obviously you can see here, this has been welded here. This is my thing I'm doing the video on, is plastic welding. And this right here was epoxied, and I should be able to show you there. Oh, it's pretty tight, but it was broke, basically. I epoxied it all together. You can see, yeah, you can see some epoxy still down in there. This is all welded yet. You kind of caught me in between wrapping up here, but I wanted to show you what I'm doing, because if it works out good, then I want to tell you about it, and I'd like to then show you. So here it is, and basically all I'm doing is taking my soldering iron. The tip actually broke off the other day. It's an old Roddy plug-in type, 40 watt I believe, and I basically found a flathead screw, a little flathead screw, and I cut it with a hacksaw to put a point on it, and it actually had threads. I actually threaded it into this, so it was nice and tight, and it seems to be working pretty good. But I want to show you guys here my there ain't much of a technique or anything to plastic welding, and how I'm doing it here. If you can see the crack right there, see if I can move this around. Bring it right in. There we go. So we got the crack, and is what I like to do. That was my weak spot. You can see it cracked there, down in there, through here, down through here, and back this side. So this actually mounts up. There's a bolt that goes right through here, and this piece, this ear, we could say, broke right off of both of these when they were attached. So I got them back and lined up. Trimmed some of the epoxy off, not all of it, like I should have, to get it to flushly mount right up. But it has mounted quite well, and again, you can see it's still cracked right there where the epoxy was moved. It's pretty tight. That's what I wanted. I was focused on getting it nice and set up, and I had clamps on it and everything else to keep it nice and stiff, so I could basically just do this. I'm just taking the iron. You can see it's got a point to it like that, and I am just setting it on there, and I like to go back and forth just a little bit. That way it kind of mends, I guess you could say, would be the word. Mends the plastic back together. If you just heat it and go straight down through, you're just taking that crack and just kind of slide and smudge over it, you know, instead of actually maybe getting something over it that's a little more protective of it. As far as filling, I have just little pieces. It's not even the same plastic. This is actually different. This is a softer plastic, but I've been using this, and I just burn a little piece off there, and I'll set it on here, because it will, when it gets hot, it will end up melting and moving that epoxy right out of there. So I want to fill it, and I just tried pushing that down inside. Now on the back side here, I got to be careful, because this is kind of precision here. It's got to meet up with the other piece for it, which is this guy right here. So I don't want it impeding that. That's the top piece. Do this one quick. This one, I'm just kind of smudging it over, just trying to get both seams to to flatten out first off, but then to mend also, and not make a big mess. And the big thing is that I go deeper instead of leave a hump, where then my attachment piece is not going to fit right. So that's basically the technique there. Nothing real special to it. It's just using a soldering iron. It gets up just almost to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, hello, Fahrenheit. And just smudging it together. And the last thing I do, now I pulled it this way, so I got kind of some smudge here. Now I just take it back and try to feed it back in, just to clean it up, because this is on the edge. Whatever you leave as far as extra, you really want to come back through. You'll even get some sharp spots from where you left off in that. I like to come back through and just schmooze them out. Schmooze it. You can see that plastic that I added, and now you can see it kind of getting moved around. Moved around and moved into the kind of combining almost. Trying to kind of clean it up, schmooze it out, and the more I go over it, the more it's just mixing it, the both sides together to make hopefully a nice strong bond. And this actually, I think it looks like crap. This right here, having the two different plastics didn't help, but I needed to fill a little bit of a void, and I didn't have a lot of plastic inside here to steal from, so I had to improvise. So I added in a little bit. Again, I got a screw that goes through here to help hold it together, so I don't want to impede that at all. So I added in my own. But believe it or not, I only had half of that done, and I was reefing on that, and it would not budge. It was actually flexing, not even budging, which is awesome. That tells me, even though you can tell, it's definitely right where the blue is there. That is, the blue is almost right over my seam, right where my seam was. I actually filled the seam by going back and forth, and then I added the blue to it to bring the layer out, to build it up kind of. Now I just kind of go through just to clean it up. Kind of tidy it up. And if you go over, you can see the solder there where I started. I still had solder on the end of this thing. I was doing something silly with it last. This is my nasty soldering iron. I think I actually got it from the dumps. I've had it for years and years. It actually don't solder worth a crap. It never has. In fact, the tip that I broke on it was a tip that I replaced it with. It was just a little tip I made out of some type of weird plug that fit just in there just right. After I had to put it in a drill and run a file on it, file it down, and it fit just perfect. But it wasn't very good at soldering at all. Just knock down this high spot here. And now I'll go across the top. I won't show you the whole thing and bore you guys to death. I don't like putting people to sleep. But I'll just zip across here. This is a fresh crack where you could actually see it. And we'll see I'm just trying to, kind of like welding, just going back and forth, kind of smudge both sides together. Again, don't want to impede my mating surface, and if I do, I just got to come through with either sandpaper or a file and get it cleaned up. I even dove way down in here because, like I said, the crack went straight through here and it took off this whole earpiece. So I wanted it, this is where I was making up my strength, I figured, by getting down in there and getting as much of that melted and mended together as I possibly could to make it as strong as possible. Why does it look so thin? Oh, it's not. Thought I could see through it. I was like, that ain't good. You can still see where there's a light spot right there. In fact, I want to get the gimmicks on it. Take a real good look at it and make sure what I'm looking at here. Yeah, you can still see a seam, but it just looks all wavy, but there's just like a shadow seam that runs right down the middle of it. I just kind of clean it up. Oh my, I can't get over how much stronger that is. Wow, that's something else. And I'll show you guys with this all attached to finish up the video. Or maybe in a part two, it depends on my phone. Sometimes my phone won't let me save. It just, especially if someone calls or text, all of a sudden it'll just stop. So it's the way it is. Cheap phone, but it works. I can't complain too much. Alright, and the second piece here. Thought this one was just about wrapped up. Get some little hanger-oners, just like when you're using the hot glue gun. You'll get some pieces that hang on. Just take them off. Now this is channeled here to fit precisely into that one to kind of lock into it. I'm going to knock this one down because there's no way I'm going to be able to make that little seam there. Better being shot there. I'm pissed. No way to do that and make it look good. So this thing is just long enough to get down in there. Get them schmoozed together. I already did the top once. I'll try to do it again. Maybe get it to mend a little better. If you keep it moving just a little bit, it won't melt a hole. It'll just kind of skim over the top. I want to hit down in here one more time. Bring your 8 in. Oh, that stupid screw right there is just in the way. Gotta flip it around. Try to rock it back and forth and get it to really mend. The screw that I did use for this tip is just a regular old, I don't think it's stainless. Nope, just a regular steel screw with an old flathead. And I use the groove for the flathead to hold the hacksaw and cut both sides to cut kind of a point. You kind of got to finesse it through to make it look like a point. It actually come out a lot better than most times I do it. I'll shave that with a knife. That high spot there. Knock that down. I can't believe that is working better. I really am impressed. That's working a lot better than the epoxy. Really is. Oh, and you gotta see what I accidentally came across. Someone threw it out. Junk, they didn't want it anymore. I didn't even know what it was. But let me finish cleaning this off. This is my old, it's my theory on the, a little concept of mine. I don't understand why people use the wet sponge technique still, because people have actually done it, and you can see it online if you watch, and watch videos of it, and they'll show you. If you put a microscope under this, every time you stick it in water, in the wet sponge, especially if it's a little too wet, when it crunches so fast, you're making micro fractures on your tip. Now again, this is a crap tip, so no one really cares, but I'm saying on a good tip, you're gonna care. And every time you're doing that, putting it in a sponge, you're actually, and I've actually noticed that. I've actually had trouble with one of my real cheap soldering irons. Every time I was putting it in the water, or not in the water, I keep saying it, but in the wet sponge, and it's supposed to just be almost a damper. It ain't supposed to be wet at all, just damp. Actually, you don't want it like water in it or anything like that, water hanging out. Every time I do that, it would quench the tip, and then I'd have to wait for it to warm back up. And so that is what mostly made me go to this idea of the, this is a lie too. This is not copper or brass, because a magnet should not stick to it if it was copper or brass. So it's actually a lie what they sell it as long as, and along with the this is the stainless, and I'll get the magnet here to show you. Ooh, I don't know what, that one's a little different. It doesn't seem to move at all, surprisingly. No attraction. Huh, I'm not sure then with the stainless one. It's definitely a cheaper one though than the brass one here, or the fake copper. It's but it's actually lasted. I've definitely abused it. You can see where I wipe off all the nastiness. This is the first time I've wiping off plastic on it, but it's actually held up quite well. But my newest garbage find is not the sponge. My newest is this guy, and this guy is something sick. And I had no idea even what I had in my hands until I started playing around with it. And I got my cords hooked up in the back safely. Here's my electric coming in. That's why I got it covered, because they're real close. I didn't want them, by moving it around, touching. It's off right now. I can touch all of them. Put my tongue on them, they won't hurt. This thing is quite amazing, and is what had me scratching my head was this right here. Condenser leakage and short. Well, I ended up testing out capacitors with it. Some of my good ones, and then ones that I knew were bad. And it was actually testing right on. So I tested the voltage that it's putting out. 200 volts when you hit the button here after you have it set up. I went, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. That's perfect for doing your higher voltage capacitor tester. So I still got some work to do to it. I want to get the cords hooked up and everything. That's a later project. Right now I'm putting this guy together for my buddy who's stopping by, hopefully to pick it up. And that'll be some more space I have for electronics here. Alright, this fit before, why doesn't it now? There it goes. I still gotta fit the internals in there. I just wanted to make sure that this was gonna go. I'll have to shave that a little bit. Yeah, the outside of that could be. I'm gonna run the razor blade over that, clean it up a little bit, and I'll come back to you guys. Alright, there it is. Lighting sucks over here, but there it is mounted up. A Ryobi radial arm saw, 8 1/4. And it, this cable right here just sucks it back in. And as you can tell, there's just a lot of force on this guy. If you bump it like that, it's going to get bumped around if you bump it here. So there's just a lot of tension back in here. tight. And over here, but as you can tell, glued up quite nice. Well, welded, plastic welded quite nicely. I cannot complain. It's very strong. Very strong it is. So, that is it. There's a shot of this whole side. Real fancy type deal. So, it turned out very good. I think you guys would be impressed. So, appreciate you guys stopping by, checking it out. So much for being short, but if anyone hung in this long, I thank you very much. And as you guys know, I appreciate any seconds or minutes you hang out with me. Try to always give you something. Thanks again, guys.